a cappella. I like a lot of songs a cappella, but we're going to start with this one. It's a beautiful song about our redemption and forgiveness that we can have because of Jesus and his shed blood. Since my wife is standing, let's all stand, please. Remember, guys, your wife is always right, so here we go. Let's sing together number 309. There is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunged beneath that flood lose all their guilty stains. Lose all their guilty stains. Lose all their guilty stains. And sinners plunged beneath that flood lose all their guilty stains. Hymn number 309, the second verse. Let's hear a few more parts if we can this time. The dying thief rejoiced to see that fountain in his day. And there may I go violently, wash all my sins away. Wash all my sins away. Wash all my sins away. And there may I go violently, wash all my sins away. Thank you. Be seated, please. Anyone who's ever learned to do laundry has been warned about or experienced what happens when you wash something new and red with something white. And the red kind of bleeds into it and makes it pink. How much more special that the redness of Christ's blood washes us white as snow. The isms of Christmas this morning, we're going to conclude with our third ism. We've talked about an ism defined technically as a distinctive practice, system, or philosophy. Sometimes it's a political ideology or whatever. But more specifically for our study, we've been talking about isms as different methods, different ideas people have about somehow getting satisfaction in their soul separate from the Savior. And do any of them work? No. Of course not. There's nothing that satisfies like Jesus. Nothing can fill that hole in your soul. And it's really tragically sad that many people who don't know Christ, they're not born again, they are trying to fill that hole with all kinds of things. But I'm not sure what's worse, that or people who are Christians who have tasted of the springs of living water and still have an appetite for the gutter water, or the stale water, or the salt water, whatever it is that is not going to satisfy. And we as believers sometimes slide back into these isms, the isms of experiencism, where we say, you know what, if I can only have this set of circumstances around me, it'll be great. If only we could just have everything in this perfectly ideal setting, I would be happy. But it's not going to happen. And instead of seeking satisfaction, some kind of experience, we need to seek it in the Savior. We need to make our plans in pencil so that if our plans for what the perfect Christmas Eve or what the perfect New Year's party is going to look like, if it doesn't come to pass, we can be happy anyways. We need to enjoy whatever God gives us. The gift that you have is the gift from God. And the gift that you don't have is the gift that God in his wisdom withheld from you. So let go of those things that you wanted and they just didn't seem to get into your hands. That's God's doing. Trust that. And then remember, you try to create this experience. Remember the good purpose behind it. Sometimes we get caught up in the means and forget the end. Let's rejoice in the goal. Then we saw we need to reject stuffism. For those who weren't here last week, on the right, that's a Rolex watch, somewhere between 7 and 12 grand. And on the left is the Graf Diamonds Hallucination watch, the most expensive watch in the world, coming in at $55 million. I know that looks gaudy, but if you could zoom in on it, you would see that each one of those little colored spots is a diamond. And part of what makes it so valuable is that they're not all white diamonds. Those aren't different kinds of stones, as I understand it. They're all diamonds, but they're more rare because they're pink and blue and yellow and all those other kind of colors. So anyways, whether it's a $55 million watch or a $48.99 watch, if you think that thing is going to make you happy, or having one more edition or one more model or one extra whatever, those things will never ever make you happy. And so instead, we need to, again, be content with Jesus. He said, I will never leave you, so be content with him. Humbly trust in the Lord to provide for your needs. Gladly share with others. When you give away, you start finding you have more than you need in the first place. Lay up your treasures in heaven more than you lay them up on earth. All right, so here's our icon for today. We had the mountain skiing scene. We had the box of stuff that arrived. And here's our last icon representing our last ism. This one's maybe a little easier to guess. What ism do you think we're going to learn about today? Sports is sometimes used as a part of this, but it's got to be an ism. It's not sportsism, but some people, this is their ism. Yeah. We should avoid racism of all kinds. Let's just put it that way. Yes. Let me just go ahead and put it on the screen there for us. Sometimes we're in sports. Sometimes we run a race. In either case, we're trying to escape.
Oh, sure.
Right? And so this guy is running his race so he can escape. You know, and I think that happens all year round. I think our culture is absolutely drunk, pun intended, on escapism. But it might be even worse around this time of year. Because this time of year, people are especially raw in their emotions. This time of year, sentimentality is heightened. Everyone is extra into their feelings at this time of year. And so when your feelings are heightened and you don't like your feelings, you're miserable, and so you try to block it out. You try to escape. And so I think escapism is possibly even more rampant among us at this time of year. And the idol that escapism sets up is just freedom. Now, freedom is a good thing in the right sense of the word, but it's a bad thing in the wrong sense of the word. Here I'm talking about freedom from responsibility. I'm talking about just the do whatever I feel like kind of freedom. And that kind of freedom is not a good thing, okay? Escapism says, I don't want anyone to tell me what to do. I don't want to have any fetters. I don't want to have any responsibilities or obligations. I don't want to owe anybody anything. I don't want to have any strings attached. I want to just go through life, and if I feel like doing this, I do it. And if I don't feel like it, I don't. It's the mentality that I don't want to have any sense of owe to anybody. Just whatever happens to occur to me, that's what I'm going to do. And so it seeks satisfaction by avoiding the realities of responsibility. If you're alive and breathing, if you have your mind, if you have any motor skills at all, you have responsibilities. But escapism wants to say, I don't have any responsibilities. I don't need to provide for anybody. I don't need to take care of anybody. I don't need to say thank you to anybody. I don't need to serve anybody. I don't need to do anything for I have no responsibilities. And all of us sometimes get weary of responsibility, and so we run away from it, and we hide and play this pretend game where for just a little while, I'm free. Nobody has any hold on me. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a trap. Because we think, if I could just be free, if I could just have this fantasy world come real, then I would be satisfied. What do you run from? Maybe we run from the mundane. Mundane are just boring, repetitive, nothing special about them kind of things. Things like, all right, I know it's Christmas break for a lot of you, but things like your homework, You run from it. Pretend it's not there. Maybe it's cleaning for you. You don't like to do I don't know what it is, the vacuuming, the dusting, the dishes, whatever. I run from that. I don't see any dirty dishes on the counter. Do you see any dirty dishes on the counter? No, it looks very clean to me. Maybe it's the paperwork that you got to do because you run a household and you just don't want to deal with the bills. You don't want to deal with whatever it is needs to be sent in. Maybe it's maintenance, just fixing stuff because stuff breaks down. It's a little bit more than cleaning, but it's the same type of idea. Or maybe it's just the mundane of communication, keeping up with people that you should keep up with. And it's just a burden to you and you don't like it, and so you run away from the mundane. Maybe you run away from the massive things that are bigger, like projects and repairs. This isn't just maintenance around the house. This is a problem that has to be fixed. What do you mean, honey, the toilet's leaking into the basement? I don't see any water. No, everything's just fine. Don't bother me. I'm reading the newspaper. I didn't step on anybody, did I? Conversations that need to be had. I'm not talking about chatting here. I'm talking about conversations, that big talk you got to have. That says, listen, you need to know this. Or, hey, this isn't okay. Or, there's a problem between us and we need to get this worked out. And that conversation is looming large in your mind and you just don't want to have it. And so you escape from the massive conversation. Maybe for you, it's spiritual massive things like studying the Bible. And you know it's important and you know that the Bible's good and you kind of like the Bible, but you know that it's heavy. Reading the Bible and reading the newspaper are not the same, true? Reading the Bible in your favorite magazine, it's totally different. It's heavier. It's massive. When you pick up a Bible, it's a heavy thing, not just because it's a large print family Bible, but because it's spiritual, because it is the breath of God. And so it's a heavy thing. Yes. Maybe it's prayer. Prayer is hard work. It is massive responsibility. And it's easy to get busy doing other things and escaping that heavy thing of prayer and Bible study. Maybe you're prone to escapism and you want to run from the things that are miserable in your life. And I'm not trying to be silly here. A lot of people have a lot of really miserable stuff going on. Yeah. Maybe it's their job. Maybe it's their job. Good to see the Crandalls come in. The Crandalls working for Amazon this week and the week before. And yeah. Miserable, is that a good word for it? Yeah. Every time I see a Prime van go by, I think, oh my goodness, poor them. There's some miserable jobs. Mr. Honeysett's walking on a roof in a huge school that's being built out in the cornfields in Wanata. Where is it? Winfield. Something with the W over there. Anyways, he's got some coworkers that can't really pull their own weight, and the job's still got to get done, and outside in this kind of weather is not when I want to do plumbing. Right? There's some people with some miserable jobs, whether it's fixing their stubborn 18-wheeler or driving way too many hours or whatever it is. Maybe it's a relationship. And again, this is not a joke. Sometimes you can't help who you're related to. And it's miserable. It breaks your heart. They're just not nice to be around. And it's not just that, okay, it's personality conflict. Like, they may be wicked sinners, and it's their sin that makes them miserable to be around. But they're still your family. Maybe it's a neighbor that moved in. Oh, who let him in? Maybe it's some pain that you deal with. And so you're miserable, and you run away from it, and you have your little place that you like to go. Maybe it's some miserable memories you have. Maybe you've been abused. Maybe somebody said hurtful things. Yes. Maybe it happened earlier today and you're just tired of thinking about it, and so you want to escape. Maybe it's your environment. Maybe you don't have a nice house. Maybe you don't drive a nice car. Maybe you don't have anything around you that you enjoy. And so you block it all out by escaping into something. These are very, very common practices all around the world, and certainly in this very wealthy culture, that we escape these responsibilities that we should be carrying by running from these things. You know, the more I thought about it, the more I saw people trying to escape in the Bible. I'm not going to talk about David, who, when it was the time for kings to go out to battle, decided to stay home and look around instead. But I will mention briefly in passing a prophet by the name of Jonah, who, when God gave him his commissioning, think about that. A year or so ago, I don't remember, we ordained Pastor Peter. What a special thing for the church to say we recognize that God's hand is on him for the work of the ministry in gospel preaching. How much more special, Jonah was ordained literally by God. Go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it. Here's your ordination papers. Go. And so Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. How'd that work out? Not well. Running away is not the answer. It's not. Now, before we deal with this kind of after our pattern, I want to deal with a question that was on my mind, and it might be on yours as well. What's the difference between escapism and, say, let's call it taking a break? Is it okay to take a break? It's okay to take a break. I hope so, because I'm taking one. Not right now, but soon. But escapism, I think, as we've defined it, is a bad thing. There may be some confusion over the difference. And I may not be able to completely clarify that, but I hope I can help with a passage of Scripture in 1 Kings. So let's turn to 1 Kings chapter 19 and learn a little bit about the difference between escapism and taking a break. Taking a break is appropriate. Escapism is not. 1 Kings chapter 19. This is a wonderful passage because it has both in it. And so we can see what you are supposed to do and what you aren't supposed to do. This is during the ministry and life of the prophet Elijah. He just had his big day on Mount Carmel. And the fire came down from heaven, and the prophets of Baal were killed. 1 Kings chapter 19. Those prophets were all kind of in cahoots with the king and queen, who were wicked and powerful. 1 Kings chapter 19. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets with a sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, So let the gods do to me and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. You understand what that was? It's called a death threat. And when you get a death threat from the monarch, that's a big deal. It's not just some, Joe Blow. This is Queen Jezebel, a very powerful and wicked woman who was used to making happen whatever she planned. Remember Naboth?
Yes.
So she says to Elijah, and he hadn't even done anything to them except say, you can't have my vineyard. Elijah had just killed all of her prophets, made a fool of them. And so she says, I'm going to kill you. Verse 3, and when Elijah saw that, he arose and went for his life. He fled, didn't he? Yeah. He was trying to escape. Did you see in the verse there where it says, and God told Elijah to go? It wasn't there, was it? He went for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there and departed into his closet for a pity party. Well, that's a little extra. Verse 4. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree and requested for himself that he might die. It's a suicide prayer. Now, he didn't take pills, he didn't stab himself, he didn't hang himself, but he asked God to do it. It's like when Saul asked his armor bearer to kill him. Except he asked God to do it. He said, It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers. And as he lay down and slept under a juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him and said unto him, Arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baken on the coals and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid him down again. And the angel of the Lord came in the second time and touched him and said, Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee. And he arose and did eat and drink, and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Mount Horeb, the mount of God. I wish we could read the rest of the account, the still small voice, the cave encounter, but for sake of time, that's where we'll have to stop our reading. I'll make some quick observations, and maybe you'll have some to add. Escapism is on our initiative. Elijah said, "What? Jezebel wants to kill me? I'm out of here." He didn't wait to hear from the Lord. He just ran. Whereas taking a break was God's provision. God sent the angel. God sent the food. God gave the water. God did all of that for him. And when we're escaping, we are of our own initiative looking for ways to insulate ourselves from responsibilities. When God gives us a break, he provides for us. Escapism is about our strength. He went running. It wasn't that the angels came and protected him or the chariot of fire led him away. He went running on his own. And I'm not saying we never run, we never drive somewhere for vacation. That's not my point. But it was a very mannish thing that he did, as opposed to the nourishment that he would later receive that was from God. God provided that nourishment for him. Perhaps more importantly, I see that Elijah was hiding from his problems. He went out in the wilderness. Jezebel can't find me here. I'm going to get away from my problems. Whereas if we could have kept reading in the chapter, when he's down in the cave at Mount Horeb, God says, "Elijah, what are you doing here? Why did you run away?" He says, "I'm not done with you. I've got work to you. You need to anoint Elisha. You need to anoint, I think it was Jehu. You need to take care of this. I've got work for you to do. And so I gave you that nourishment. I gave you that rest. And I gave you that water. And I gave you that strength so that you could go on and serve me." Whereas earlier, he just wanted to get away from his problems. He wasn't thinking about, I got to get away so that I can serve you more. I got to get away because I don't want to get killed. I instead want God to kill me. Kind of doesn't make sense, does it? But when we're in escapism, that's how it is. Escapism, understatement, is unhealthy. He wanted to die. But taking a break is wholesome. Good food, taking naps, getting some rest, getting some water, that's good. I told my mom after her hospital stay, you need the Elijah treatment. You need to sleep and eat and sleep some more and eat some more. And some of you have been busy and working very hard at your jobs or here in the ministry or wherever, and you need the Elijah treatment. You need a little extra sleep. Yeah. You need a little extra eat. Amen? Yeah. Okay. Often escapism is purely physical. But taking a break, the best kind, is physical and spiritual. In my own experience, sometimes I have to have the physical break before I can receive the spiritual break. And that's what happened here too. Elijah got the rest and the food and the water, and then he had the encounter with God at Mount Horeb and was given a commission of a new work to do. So sometimes the physical has to come before the spiritual. Anyone else want to chime in on what do you think is the difference? How do you know when you've crossed the line and you're not just taking a godly break, you're in escapism? Maybe you can talk about it on the ride home or maybe over the dinner table. Any thoughts, difference between escapism and taking a break? Mm-hmm.
I think with escapism, you have a negative attitude. Mm-hmm. And when you're taking a break, you have just a pleasant attitude.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a negative attitude versus a pleasant attitude. I think attitude is definitely an indicator. Yeah, Pastor McNeil.
Yeah, kind of when taking a break becomes an ism.
Mm.
When I should be taking care of responsibilities, but
Yeah,
I want myself another break.
that's right.
Sometimes you just don't get one.
Yeah,
Like when you got to drive, 600 miles,
yeah,
and you're the only driver.
yeah. You just do it. And I think bringing it back to an ism, I think we have to be careful that the breaks don't become our right. I think that's an indicator of our attitude. Like, nobody's touching my break. Well, hold your hands open. It's God's. Yeah.
Piggybacking on taking a break, looking at the New Testament, how Jesus took his breaks, and he would often go to the wilderness, and he would take a break. But sometimes people followed him there, and it wasn't an inconvenience that in the middle of the break, he still got to serve someone.
Right. So he scheduled and planned for times to get away for spiritual and physical reasons. Some privacy, some space physically, and some spiritual time alone with his Father. But if he got interrupted, he would go ahead and minister. Yeah. So that's a couple differences. Yes?
I'll just piggyback on physical. Escapism is about the flesh.
Yeah.
David.
Mm-hmm.
David.
Mm-hmm.
if when you're off in your secret place,
Yeah,
it's the flesh.
yeah.
It's different than reading a Bible under a pine tree.
Yes, yes, well said. And I kind of meant that, but you put it much more clearly. I like that. So rather than just saying physical, though that's true, it's fleshly, which is the body, but it's also the never satisfied, voracious human appetites that are sometimes impure, as opposed to reading your Bible alone. Yeah. Okay, so escapism doesn't work. So why do we keep trying it? Well, we're stubborn, but here's some biblical reasons why it doesn't work. Number one, God is always there. Whither shall I go from thy spirit? Right? In Psalm 139, David says, wherever I go, God, you're there. Jonah found that out, didn't he? Even down in the bottom of the mountains, there in the water, in the fish's belly, in the whale's belly, there's Jonah, and he didn't escape God. But he decided it was time to pray to God instead of run from God. Wherever you go, God is always there. You can't escape. And I would add to that, problems don't go away. Problems don't go away. I'm sure there's different passages we could use for this, but this is kind of it's a sad passage, but I think it's worth our reading. Proverbs chapter 23. Proverbs 23. It's no secret that a lot of times when people want to escape, they do so by means of a needle or a bottle, right? Drugs and alcohol are a very common, popular way that people try to escape. And that's proverbial, that's common knowledge. And it's illustrated for us here in this very sad text, Proverbs 23, starting in verse 29. Who hath woe, who hath sorrow, who hath contentions, who hath babbling, who hath wounds without cause, who hath redness of eyes? They that tarry long at the wine, they that go to seek mixed wine. Look not thou upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth his color in the cup, when it moveth itself aright. At the last it biteth like a serpent, and stingeth like an adder. And isn't that the truth? Thine eyes shall behold strange women, and thine heart shall utter perverse things. Yea, thou shalt be as he that lieth down in the midst of the sea, or as he that lieth on the top of a mast. They have stricken me, thou shalt say, and I was not sick. They have beaten me, and I felt it not. And this is the part that is just such a heartbreaker. When shall I awake? I will seek it yet again. The escape never works. The problems don't go away. And so eventually you sober up and the problem's still there. Eventually the high wears off and the problem is still there. And for those of us who don't escape through those means, can I say that the same truth applies? And we say, oh, well, I don't do that. Yeah, but you have your own method of escapism. And when it's over, the problem is still there, isn't it? Now, if you're taking a break, you're stronger, you've rested, and you're better able to attack the problem. But if you are just in escapism, you're actually probably depleted and in worse shape for dealing with the problem. Escapism does not work. The problems do not go away. They are still there, but now they're bigger. Don't forget most of your problems you take with you. Because I am my own worst problem. It's not my circumstances. It's not other people. It's not something that the government did to me or Hollywood. No, it's me. I'm the problem. We like to teach that phrase, it's not about me. And one time when that's not true is when we're talking about the problem. The problem is about me. I am the problem. Lord, fix me. You take your problem with you, and if you try to escape your problems, it's never going to work. Mr. Benner, did you have something to add? Yeah. He said the difference between escapism and taking a break is how habitual it is. And I think I had in my notes, and I forgot to say, and how much time you spend doing it. So do you do it often, and do you do it for long periods? I think that's an indicator that you may have a problem with that. Yeah.
Actually, I was thinking about that. I guess a good indicator is, are you trying to get away from that problem permanently, or are you looking to regroup so you can tackle that problem again?
Very well said. Are you looking to just get away from it so you never have to deal with it? just put it behind you? Or are you saying, okay, I'm not in condition to deal with this right now. I need to step back a little bit, regroup. I like that word. Now, let's run up the mountain again. I think those are great, great distinctions, men. Thank you for that. So problems don't go away. And whether your means of escape is drugs and alcohol, or, well, let's just list a few. I've got a whole long list in my notes, but why don't you all preach at each other for a little bit? I am convinced that you are well able to admonish one another in the Scriptures. So what are some things that we sometimes escape into? Yeah. Your phone. Everybody escapes into my phone? Or, okay, right. Yeah, no, everybody escapes into your phone. That's right, we do, don't we? And it's funny, I was analyzing myself about this. We'll say, oh, man, my phone's just blowing up. Man, I just got all these texts. But it's kind of when you're doing something that you're not really wanting to, you're like, oh, my phone buzzed. Let me see who it is. It's a spam caller. That's okay, I'm going to answer it anyways. Anything to keep from doing what I'm doing. Yeah, we escape into our phone. What else? Where do we escape? Spending. Yeah, if I spend it, I'll feel better. If I buy it, I'll feel better. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Music, yeah. Of all kinds, good, bad, and indifferent. We can use music as a mask for whatever it is. And I'm telling you, having an office on Calumet Avenue, especially when I was closer to the intersection during the summer, man, do some people hide in their music. It is so loud. You know that whatever is in their mind troubling them must be really loud if they have to play their music that loud to try to drown it out. Yeah, yes, sir.
I remember not last summer, but the summer before, you were getting ready to go on vacation. You spoke about vacation and how we can make it escapism, where we do the things that we wouldn't do when we're around people that see us.
Yeah.
Or we can make it a time where we spend time with our family, being what they need, being servants to them. When we're in nature, that we're praising God for what He's done out there, rather than feeding our own desires and selfishness.
Yeah. Intentionally doing those wholesome, edifying, building up things rather than just check out from the Christian life. The rules are gone. I don't have to do these things, and I'm allowed to do these things that I normally don't. Yeah. Are there some other specific things that we escape into besides spending and music and our phones? Eating, yes. Eating is a common method of escape. Yeah, it for sure is. Yeah. Movies, absolutely. You forget it all. You get lost in this non-real world, right? And those problems always get solved handily, at least most of the time. Yeah. Technology in general, yeah, for sure. Hobbies, spending, shopping, all these things. Yeah. Well, I think it sounds like maybe you already know where we escape. So let's move on because we're don't have extra time. Here's a very interesting verse. It's almost like a proverb, but it's in the book of Amos. I'll read it to you if you don't know how to find the book of Amos. You're like me. Amos 5:19. Digital Bibles have made me dumb. I have such a hard time looking up the prophets anymore. Amos 5:19. In the context, I think, as I understand it, God's people are being kind of rebuked, saying, oh, you've got bad problems, and so you're wishing for the day of the Lord. But when the day of the Lord comes, trust me, it's going to be even worse. Amos 5:19. As if a man did flee from a lion, and a bear met him. Or went into the house and leaned his hand on the wall, and a serpent bit him. You run from one problem right into the jaws of another. It happens in nature, and it happens in our lives. And when we try to escape, it does not work because God is always there, because problems don't go away, and there's always another problem. Why will there always be another problem? Well, because we live in a broken world. The whole creation groaneth and together. Why don't you turn to Romans 8? We know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth together in pain until now. The whole world is broken. Now, there is a tremendous amount of beauty and joy and wonder in our world, even as broken as it is. But it is a broken world. And creation groans, and because of the brokenness of our world, there will always be problems. Romans 8:22 is what I just read. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. Travail there is a word often used of a woman giving birth. It's some serious, intense pain. And this whole creation is in serious, intense pain because of the curse. And verse 23 talks about how we're also groaning. And we have hope, but we haven't received it yet. We live in a broken world, so there will always be problems. So if you escape one problem, what have you accomplished, really? You're just walking into the next. We get that mentality of just around the corner, everything will be great. Oh, tomorrow it'll be better. Next week will be better. Well, when my ship comes in, or when my vacation comes, or when we retire, or when the house gets paid off, or when we get a new car, or when, and we put this time horizon on it that when these problems are past us, everything will be peachy. Guess what? There'll be new problems. There'll be new problems. We live in a broken world. And there will always be problems because God uses trials to sanctify us. Let's skim down in that chapter to verse 28. We'll always have problems because we live in a broken world, but we'll always have problems because God wants to sanctify us. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. God's plan for everyone who's a Christian is to make you like Jesus. And throughout the New Testament, we're told over and again that it's the hard things in life that are the sandpaper and the hammer and chisel and the other refining tools that make us like Jesus and take away the things that aren't like Jesus. And until you're perfectly like Jesus, you're going to have trials in your life. And just as your friend, let me tell you, none of you are perfectly like Jesus yet. Amen. There's my condemnation statement for the morning. Okay? You all got some progress that still needs to be made. And so God is going to give you problems, guaranteed, because those problems are what's going to help you be like Jesus. So you run from your problems to what end? If you face this, if you escape this problem where God is trying to teach you patience or teach you love or teach you to depend on him or teach you how small you are in humility. If you run from this problem where God is trying to teach you something, you're going to run smack into another problem and he's going to say, you've got to learn humility and dependence and, right? God is a very persistent teacher. And if you run from one class, you'll run right into the next class. There's no point. Escapism does not work. So what should we do instead? Instead of trying to escape, we need to consider Jesus. Hebrews 12. Consider him who endured such contradiction of sinners against him, lest you be weary and faint in your minds. You're weary and you're ready to give up. You want to faint. Consider Jesus. Right? He says, you haven't yet resisted unto blood. You need to run with patience the race that is set before you. All that Hebrews 12, 1 through 3. I'm only not turning there because of time, but it's so relevant. Consider Jesus. Instead of trying to escape, think about him. And specifically, Hebrews 12 tells us to consider the contradiction of sinners that he endured for us. And what he did for us, enduring the cross and despising the shame. His whole passion, the mocking, the pain, all of it. Consider that. Next time you want to escape your problem, what would it have been like if Jesus had tried to escape his problem? Well, in fact, all of the Gospels talk about Jesus' interaction with the Father leading up to that, don't they? I'm going to ask you to turn to John 18:11. John 18:11. Please review Hebrews 12 sometime in the next week. It says, consider him who endured such contradiction of sinners. It talks about how he endured the cross, despising the shame. But in John 18, I'm going to give you some incidents and some statements made there that night before Jesus' arrest. Not in chronological order, but in logical order for us. John 18:11, they're in the garden. Judas and his band are there. And Peter gets brave and pulls out his sword and cuts off the servant of the high priest's ear. John 18:11. Then said Jesus unto Peter, put up thy sword into the sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? Jesus is saying to Peter, not for the first time, why do you keep trying to get me out of the very thing that I came for? Jesus had earlier said, I'm going to go to Jerusalem and the priests are going to abuse me and kill me. And Peter says, no, that's not going to happen to you. And he says, yes, it is. Get behind me, Satan. And here, he's about to go and die for the sins of the world. And Peter pulls out his sword to stop salvation from happening. And Jesus says, why would I not drink the cup that my Father gives me? Interesting that he would call it that, because in Luke 22, 42 through 43 is one of the accounts where it talks about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, falling on his face and praying 3 times, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. But nevertheless, thy will be done, not mine. And it says in Luke, I think it's the only gospel that records it, that an angel came and ministered to him. He prayed and God strengthened him. God didn't say, I'll take the cup away. God says, I'll give you strength to drink the cup. And that's what we need to look at our problems too. Don't try to escape your problems. Depend on God for prayer, for strength in the problems. Say, God, I want to run away from this, but I know you've got it here for me. Help me to face it. Give me the strength that I need. So think about Jesus, specifically how he recognized God's role in the situation. The cup of Calvary was given to Jesus by his Father. What is Jesus going to do? Say, I don't want this? The cup of the problem that you have right now, that thing that you wish would go away without being dealt with, that issue, God just set that in front of you. He says, here, drink this. It'll be good for you. Might not taste good, but it's going to make you more like my son. Why would you try to escape that? Instead, depend on God in prayer, and then you need to rise to the responsibility. We come back to that word responsibility again, don't we? Escapism is about denying responsibility. Jesus was the only one who could save the world. That's why he came. If we could have saved ourselves, Jesus wouldn't have need to have been born, and he wouldn't need to die. Jesus was the only one that could do that, and so he rose to the challenge. Look at Matthew 26:46. Matthew 26:46. All of these last 3 points here are from the same time period, just different gospels. Matthew 26, verse 46. After he's been praying in the garden and his disciples fall asleep on him, let's read verse 45. Then cometh he to his disciples and saith unto them, Sleep on now and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me. And do you understand the significance of rise, let us be going? When he said that, Jesus knew exactly where Judas and the soldiers were. And he was not going away from them, he was going towards them. Jesus prayed, he received ministering from the angel, and then he says, all right, now it's time to go. Can you say that? All right, now it's time to face my problem. I got some rest, I got some ministry, I looked to Jesus, and now I'm going to walk right into this problem. I'm going to face it head on. For us as Christians, that's what we need to do. That's the godly response. Don't try to escape. Reject escapism. No, rest in the Lord, but then rise to your responsibilities. Depend on him. Draw your strength from him. Consider Jesus. And then get up and do the thing. Endure the thing that God has given you to do. Lord, it's very easy for us to try to drown out our problems instead of trusting you for our problems. Help us to remember that they're not going to go away. Lord, show us in our own lives. I'm not here to write a prescription for anybody. Show us in our own lives when we're crossing the line from taking a break into escapism. And convict us. And help us to put our phone down. Help us to turn off the TV. Help us to put the ice cream back in the freezer. Quit spending, whatever. Help us to not play those games that people without you play. Help us to be satisfied and trust you. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for coming to this earth. And thank you for not escaping the cup, but drinking every last drop for us. We love you. We want to be like you and live for you. So help us, we ask, in your name.